that, you said, man, I'm born for this.
For
So
sure.
yeah, right on. So since you born for this, we bout this. Let's just jump right in. Tell the listeners who you are. And we'll go from there.
I am Andy Williams Jr., 2024 presidential candidate. We started a We Are the People party because we are the people and we fed up with the current system. I was born in Aurora, Illinois. My parents separated when I was 2. My stepmom is German. We call them white people, Caucasian. I grew up in a two-parent household with my pops. Played the saxophone, the violin, had a piano in our crib, straight A student, very disciplined, structured home. If you know anything about German people, it's very structured.
Mm,
And when her and my pop split up uh, when I was 12, I was able to go into the streets. And to her defense, I was trying to get involved in the streets before she left, but when she seen I dyed the shoestring green with uh shoestring food coloring, she said, take that out. You know what I'm saying? Because she was the gatekeeper in the home for real, because Pops had his own business.
okay,
And
so
I often say, huh?
he was busy.
Doing what he thought he needed to do
Hmm.
based on, his upbringing.
Hmm.
And I often say if my stepmom and Pops never would have separated, I would have been in the heels of Johnny Cochran, just based on where I've evolved at today.
Yeah.
So once they separated, I got involved in gangs, started getting suspended from school. And by the time ninth grade came around, I had flunked it. And so
Mm.
from flunking it, going back to the homeroom class, I was embarrassed. I just dropped out of high school and started hanging in the streets, getting involved with snatching gold chains, stealing, stuff like that. And I wind up going to prison. I got caught up on a snatching some girl's gold chain at school. Then the lieutenant of the police department's wife, her chain got snatched the same night, and they said it was me, which it wasn't.
Hmm.
My homie come into the county jail, and I'm like 9 months in, and we talking. He like, man, I did that. I'm like, man, Ken ain't gonna do no good in the joint, and I just did a blind plea, got 3 years, did about 4 months in the Department of Corrections, and then I got out, paroled to my childhood home, which was a dope house.
Mm.
Homies and got into the powder cocaine. It's 90s. They said, man, you in a hot spot. Boom, I started slanging dope. 3 months later, I'm locked up on a dope case. I got raided. I beat the dope case in a bench trial. And when I got out, and I was guilty, ain't no question. I got out, I went to the law library, started learning all about the dope game. And then I
Wow.
just started selling hellified dope.
Mm.
And the blueprint under Larry Hoover's vision from Gangster Disciple to Growth and Development is what turned me around. So I was a regent, in the city. And when I read that, the
That's
blueprint, the literature, hmm?
what does that mean that you were a regent in the city?
It's at that time the structure of the organization was set up. Like you had a governor, region, coordinators, assistant coordinators. It was structured,
Hmm.
and I was like next to the governor, in
Okay.
essence, and about to be the governor the way the streets was talking. Um,
So what did that mean for you to be the governor? Like, what did you have to do, or what were your responsibilities, etc.?
so really out in our town, Aurora, the structure really was like we coming together for sessions and meetings, and uh based on my upbringing, I was more about an economic development platform what I was doing.
Hmm.
So the position was just, hey, we see you moving, and it's the position. It was not no at least not for how I was. I can't speak to other structures and what they was doing. I just know the our structure was way more laid back, and I was in the position based on the dope game I was in and the charisma I had from the way I was carried myself. Always confident in who I am. Just the way I was brought up is put me in that position.
So you were sharp coming up, and probably had a little edge over many of the guys that you grew up around because of the structure that uh, went into raising you.
I would concur with that. I would. Yeah. So I was always a planner. I thought two, three steps ahead of everything, you
Mhm.
know. So I applied the blueprint and walked away from the street, the negative part of the street life. Um, Went to church, got ordained as a deacon, got married, bought a house, got in the mortgage business, um, and then the financial crisis hit, you know, and I got put into a wrongful foreclosure. I fought that for 13 years. That took me into full-fledged community advocacy. Joined the NAACP. Oh, I thought you were gonna say something. Um, Became a vice president, the chairman of housing, toured around the states, when they would have our national conventions, and just was, soaking up the information and knowledge. Um, but that foreclosure that I got put in, I learned so much about federal proceedings and stuff like that, because I started suing people to all the banks, uh, understood, self-taught about the foreclosure crisis, what started it, the two banks too big to fail, just learned a lot. And I wind up losing the foreclosure case because the house was really in my ex-wife's and dad's name, and I'm a junior. And we did it that way because one of the lenders I worked with, they wouldn't loan the money to me, and they was giving me such a good deal. It's like, well, my dad just put in his name, it's still Andy Williams. And when that came out with because I did it all pro se, and then I got an attorney, and when she found out it was the difference between junior and senior, she represented my dad, but the PTSD, which we call it legal abuse syndrome, that happened fighting this case for 13 years, it took a toll on my whole life. And even though you fighting every day, the trauma that is faced from white collar crimes, you can't see it. It's a silent injury. So boom, I wind up getting a divorce. Yeah, was you finna say something, Brother Craig?
No, I just said, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like I'm digging it. You know,
Hmm.
white collar crime, that trauma is invisible. People don't see it. People typically don't see trauma, but they might see it from more direct violence, but yeah,
Hmm.
this white collar is silent. So I'm just,
Right. Right.
wow, that's powerful.
And then from me and my wife getting a divorce, uh I stayed in the community, um, came up with an invention. I created a teddy bear in the shape of a coffin, got a patent on that. So, I'm still doing this entrepreneur thing.
Yeah,
And, fast forward and then in 2019, my friend did a mass shooting in Aurora. He was the perpetrator. I like to keep it clean and say he led a slave revolt because the system, I mean the plantation he was working at had that spirit there from the 60s, and so there was some personal things they was doing with the brother and his money, holiday pay, back and forth for 15 years, and he just said he snapped. So one day, they was in there to discuss his termination of his employment, and he shot um, and killed 5 people
wow,
and shot 6 officers.
wow.
That threw me back into the community because I had moved out of my hometown, Aurora.
Mhm.
Uh, and so I wound up doing a eulogy at his funeral, working with the police fundraisers because they had their own fundraisers. 6 of their officers got shot. And
Wow.
I'm telling you, brother Andy was super uncomfortable to go to this event because
I can,
they didn't see me.
yeah, I can only imagine.
And I got a good reception from them though, for real. Like they said, man, we appreciate what you're doing, how you stood up and got involved in that because his family suffering too. And I just thought that was phenomenal. Because I was very uncomfortable. And then from there, um, I had got so involved into the community that I forgot about my financial affairs at home. And then I felt like the spirit, was nudging me like, hey, bro, you got to get some stuff together. And it was May 3rd, 2019, 10 o'clock. I was on the computer and the spirit asked me, would you run for president? I'm like, I bet, cool. Like I didn't think nothing of it. Not how can I this? Told my wife about it Monday. that following Monday, and she said, let her pray about it. So then I ran for president, no experience. Um, got into the books, read about the Federal Election Commission, just moving with the spirit. Wind up joining the Libertarian Party. Did at least about 10 debates, one live debate. That's before COVID hit. And right after that, I get stopped on a traffic stop by the police for failing to use my signal 100 feet and failing to come to a complete stop. The best thing they could have did to me, man. I've been fighting that case for 4 years, and it's finna turn huge into that. So from that traffic ticket, the social unrest with George Floyd, I wind up filing a lawsuit against the police department, calling them slave patrols. I filed a suit against the United States and 30 other states for their ongoing role of slavery. They said I didn't have standing, and they dismissed it at the appellate court, which I might keep chucking with it and go to the Supreme Court, but I might not. I still got a couple months to figure that out. And then came around for this 2024 election. I was not considering doing anything. Like, I'm tired of the government. I don't want to be a part of this corporate system, because there's a difference between we the people and our sovereign state, and then the United States government, which is a corporation. And it's two
Absolutely.
ways.
Yeah. Let me
And I
ask you,
did.
if I
Okay.
could, before we get too far out. But what stood out to me, man, is especially, your earlier story about being involved in the dope game. Like you came from this house that was pretty stable, and then it broke up, and then you got into the dope game, got into the streets, um, and then you transitioned. And so, where did the influence for transitioning come, and what caused you to transition from a D boy to a political candidate, a legal pundit, et cetera, et cetera? Like, how did you switch from that side to where you are now, and what encouraged that?
It was what I like to say in Jeremiah 29:11, and it's a scripture for reference for me. For I know the plans that I have for you.
Mhm.
And so this was what my assignment was, to go through this journey. But if I take it back and say, as a kid growing up, Jehovah Witness come to the crib, they got this my book of Bible stories.
Mhm.
So I was always on punishment. Don't I listen, there was accountability in my house, and I could only have the Bible.
Mhm.
So the Bible, that became my heroes. So I had a foundation that I had my own heroes. It wasn't like Superman and all that. Them wasn't my heroes. It was Shadrach, Meshach, and a bad Negro, Moses and that. And then coming into the blueprint from Gangster Disciple, the growth and development of Larry Hoover, that blueprint saved my life. Like it really did, because I applied what I had read. And so that foundation was already there. I just had got off the course. And for those that know about the blueprint, it talked about education, economics, politics, social development, that we are destroying our communities. And me, inspired by, this man, Larry Hoover, never meeting him one time, it showed me a different part of me.
Mhm.
And see, I didn't grow up in the poverty in the hood of that. So that's something I never knew personally, because the brothers that I kicked it with, I didn't know there was a seriousness of lack there. I just, hey, that's how they live in here. I was naive to that because I had no experience, with that.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And so that's what, turned me around. And seeing that blueprint, I just did a whole 360. But
Mhm.
I had something to come back to. So I don't, I'm not trying to make it seem like I did some spectacular turnaround. I think a lot of times when we say people are on the wrong path, no, that's the only path they ever knew.
Right. You already had a path. You just got off
Mhm.
that.
Most definitely.
Okay. And then the blueprint kind of helped you remember your path and aided you a little bit in
Yeah.
going further.
Yeah. I think
And
from a,
so, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. No, go
No,
ahead, brother.
okay. Well, I just want to know, like, from an earlier stage in your life, would you have been considered a GD, or were those just people you were hanging out with?
We say guilty by association. So, I'm hanging out with the fellas, and I grew up, with in the neighborhood with the Latin Kings and Deuces. So
Okay.
it was a whole thing. My grade school was Latin people.
Right.
Middle school was folks, but I still lived in the Latin neighborhood.
Right.
But here's all these brothers, man, this me, this what I'm gravitating towards. So
Right.
I was in a crossfire and I brought hella fire heat to the crib, from shotguns being pulled on my pops and brothers to our windows being busted out,
Mm.
to me getting off the bus, sometimes having to run home because I'm living in their hood,
Right.
childhood homies stealing on me. Like it
Mhm.
was, but it was me in a war oblivious to being in a war.
Okay. All because you claim folk.
Yeah.
That's heavy, man. That's heavy. Did you ever find yourself facing prison time or serious injury?
So I did. So when I got out of jail, when I went to prison the first time, I mean the only time for it was a total of 13 months, but I did 4 months in the Department of Corrections.
Okay.
When I got out on that dope case, when I got out and got charged with that dope case, it was 6 to 30.
Mm.
And so I just found a way in the law library with a pass and beat that case. Um, when I was prior to me being married the first time, my my ex-wife's brother was heavy in the streets after I had already transitioned mentally, growth and
Hmm.
development, but I still was selling dope. I just didn't have a Malibu with the hydraulics in the streets all the time. Well, he got murdered in front of my house. And then 2 days later, no, the next day they came back and I had got in a shootout with them. So that was the time, like it was like Pac was like, yo, death around the corner. The bullet hole went through my bathrobe. And I just know it was, for me, by the grace of God and from a spiritual grace of God, the ancestors, not the religious part. I got to clarify
Yes, sir.
that I was saved. You know what I'm saying? Like I was prevented from that for such a time as now, where I consider us being the Joshua generation and we in the promised land. And we get to learn from the Moses generation, meaning the 60s, the Panthers, the hippies, the young lords, all that. We get to hear them and it's tangible. And now we can create a new government, as I would put it. Like now it's a new government that's ran by the people and not the corporations.
And as you mentioned, our country is really a corporation. So yeah, it's really run on this economic profit based um I don't know, perspective, I guess we want to call it, you
Right.
know, approach. Yeah, that's heavy, man. A couple things that are standing out to me, and I'm just gonna dig back into the past real quick, and then we can move forward. But it's not so much a question, but what stands out to me is just how, as you detailed some of the trauma, the physical trauma, the gunshot, losing your people, um, and how some of that preceded the change. You had already started making the psychological change, but then some of the ish started happening. It started getting real thick. I just realized, or I not just realized, but I'm realizing how there is a common um, thread amongst many of the people that I've interviewed on this platform, including myself. Whereas once we are faced with some heavy burden or some heavy tragedy or something, many times it encourages us to bend that corner all the way. Be it, death around the corner, a gang full of time, seeing our people, our loved ones get lost, et cetera, et cetera. But that's what I'm hearing from you. You know, I had some heavy stuff going on in my life. I was ready to change, but once some of the heaviness came, that just kind of pushed me around the corner.
So for a clarification point, when I walked off the streets, I wasn't in nothing. Like I
Mhm.
didn't have no drama. Like I walked out at the end of '94, and in fact, when I walked out, I had two dope cases pending, and I was gonna beat them. I had a public defender and a lawyer, and I was
Mhm.
gonna beat these cases because I already had knew the game,
Mhm.
and I had got a letter from the elections commission telling me I needed to register my address to vote.
Mhm.
And I'm what? You just sent the letter to me. And it triggered something in me. I think the ancestors was like, here y'all go again with this bull crap. And
Hmm.
from that, a consciousness happening, a real awakening happening. And it contributed to the blueprint because there's a piece in there um, that talks about a creative force. But then the dope case I had, I go into court. And if anybody has known about the new Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, I told the judge, this is what y'all doing in here. This is slavery. You sitting up there like you the plantation owner. Bro, the whole courtroom quiet. One of my lawyers' face turned red. I'm dressed up looking like Malcolm in this Joker. And they locked me up for 6 months in the mental health center. And
Afraid. They thought
huh?
something wrong. You wasn't afraid, so they probably thought something wrong with this dude.
Yeah. And that was that I believe is the way I was saved in a sense from what was happening with that war going on in the streets.
Hmm.
But I wasn't in the war, like physically in the war. I still was part of it though. And I say that because I walked out from the streets. The streets I didn't have no pressure on me. I wasn't under no investigation. I ain't had no cats coming after me and none of that, you know. That's why I give, the honor and respect to the chairman Larry Hoover,
Yeah.
because that blueprint is what inspired me, and I'm not ashamed of that. The same way we look at Malcolm X honoring Elijah Muhammad, that's the way I feel about the Honorable Chairman Larry Hoover. In fact, when I had went to the mental health center, I spoke about that I had a desire to free him under a social cause, and this is the first time me publicly saying this. But 2 weeks ago, I wrote a letter of recommendation for his parole,
Mhm.
and that, you talking about 30 years later, some brother with a dream, and then now I'm in a position to put a pen to a paper to, articulate the impact that this blueprint had on my life without ever even talking to somebody, so that's the power into reading and applying what you read.
Right. You have to apply it or it don't matter.
Correct.
Hmm.
Same way with the scriptures. If you're gonna read them, be them. See yourself in the scriptures, because that's how I've found myself. Because you can hear all this trauma. I still had to heal from a lot of that. We ain't talking about the domestic violence cases that a brother done got put up on. You know what I'm saying? The infidelity and the things that I was doing based on not knowing who I am, because there's no example, there's no model. But that didn't continue to be an excuse, because then I had to become the model that I wanted to see.
Once you become of age of reasoning, then you can definitely start making those changes because now you are held accountable for recognizing your shortcomings. And it sounds like that's what happened to you. You took accountability. You recognized some of your shortcomings, and you began working on it. And one of the things that stood out to me, I don't know if you realize the heaviness of it, or listeners who will hear this realize the heaviness of it. It was a simple statement you said, which was, I began to healing, and I think that so many of us, particularly those of us who identify as men, specifically those of us who identify as Black men, um, when it comes to healing and acknowledging our hurt and our pain, I think that that's where we come up short a lot of times,
Right.
and we don't want to present ourselves as, I don't know, damaged or harmed or potentially considered weak, and so we continue to front and hold on to all our pain without trying to address it, and I think that just causes more trauma in our lives and the lives of people who are connected with us in our communities, and so we never get to a place where we are supposed to be. We never get to get to a place where we can express our full selves because we don't know ourselves yet. We have all this trauma on top of us, blocking our light, blocking us from growing, I guess, or being the best that we can be. Sort of like, and I'll close it on this. The example is I like walking out in the forest a lot. And sometimes, in the forest, there's all these big trees, all these big trees. But oftentimes you'll see smaller trees next to the big trees. They're waiting for the big tree to fall so they can get light, so they can grow.
Hmm.
Sometimes the canopy above us, which is our trauma, our ish, our poverty, is so thick, so big, it's not letting in enough light for us to grow. And I'll leave it at that.
No, that's heavy, man. Just so you know, when we make it to Washington, D.C., I'm gonna
Mhm.
need you to be the in-house therapist, just so you know, bro.
Bro, just call on me, bro. Just call on me. Here,
Yeah.
people, for those of us who come from the bottom, those of us who've been in the penitentiaries, in the dope houses, on the whole stroll, or behind the pistol, all of that. Because as we are illustrating in this conversation, we can do 180s, we can do 360, and we can reclaim our greatness. And that's what I'm hearing you're doing. And so, in our last couple minutes together, brother, um, talk about your campaign a little more and talk about how people can support you.
So our campaign is focused on the one goal of the campaign is to abolish slavery. And that was a lawsuit that I filed against the United States and 30 states. But on a holistic platform, it's a constitutional republic. And that's where it's the people are sovereign, like we're going back to an organic constitution where it's limited government. And then the second platform is unalienable rights. The rights of the people are given to us by nature's God and a creator, not by the government. And we, the people, need to understand that. And we don't. We do not know. And January 6th is an example of people that believe their rights have been infringed and they were fed up. That's what that movement was about. And believe it or not, a lot of us who would understand civics feel the same way they do, but we just ain't gonna do that. But if we knew them and we have relationships with them, because I sit at tables with Republicans and conservative, we share the same ideology that the government is tyrannical and we're fed up.
Mhm.
The third platform is government accountability. We don't have so judicial and prosecutorial misconduct is regulated. Immunity in itself is unconstitutional, and there's a case at the Supreme Court that's trying to hear about that. Because when you become an elected official, you lose your sovereignty as the people and become a person. You're not sovereign no more. You're here to serve the people. So whenever you infringe upon the rights of the people, you entitled to a remedy. And that's when we talk about government accountability, I'm saying the judicial system is the tool for modern day slavery. And when we talk about the reparations, I'm not going back to the 13th Amendment. We can start right here at the 1960s. Because
Okay.
whenever you lock somebody up for a victimless charge,
Hmm.
that is a violation of Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution, because you've never suffered a concrete injury. That's
Hmm.
how they've legalized slavery, and we can get restitution, meaning give us back our land, make our communities whole. But this is not something we're asking for. This is our rights, because this campaign is all about our rights. The fourth platform is prison abolition. And in order to abolish the modern day prison complex situation, we bring in the Aboriginal teachings of restorative justice, transformative justice. So I'm not saying there's no accountability because for the believers, the Lord does discipline those who he loves.
Hmm.
And when we're talking about abolishing prison, we're going back to the limited role of government, which is really to correct, protect, and direct. That would be the limited role of government. So you protect the rights of the people, you direct the people to the resources if they're not there, and then you correct, to help people get back on the right path. And that sometimes means, reformatory school for the juveniles and correctional facilities for the adults, with the whole goal of reformation, rehabilitation, and that. So there is a role of government. And then
I
the
like,
fifth,
if I could
uh-huh,
just jump real quick, that piece, because, I'm formerly incarcerated, and this podcast is focused and aimed at people who are incarcerated with carceral issues. And, you talk about corrections and juvenile facilities, and the whole purpose should be to correct. And we know already these correctional facilities do nothing like that. They only
correct.
destroy people, they only make people worse. I just wanted to point that out. So if that system can be overhauled, that would be wonderful.
It,
We
it
got,
can.
so I don't want to cut you off anymore.
No, no, no. So, and the last point is made in America. It's
Mm,
economic empowerment. So we can't ask the government to resurrect Black Wall Street when it was people hiding behind the government that destroyed Black Wall Street.
mhm,
And if we take the cannabis, the hemp stalks,
Hmm.
because what back in the 1800s, hemp was a form of currency. So we get
Legal.
to do that now. Henry Ford allegedly was the first person to make a vehicle out of hemp. In Canada, there's a plane made out of hemp. There was uh, paper, clothing, steel, bulletproof vests, toothpaste, soap. So much is made out of hemp.
Mm-hmm.
And so we take the model of that, which we resurrect that, because now that's how we get our reparations for the uh, war on people disguised as a war on drugs, and we rebuild our communities, but we're not asking, quote unquote, the government to give us some fiat money. We're
Right.
saying we have the ability to use our right to an occupation to farm again, because you can't legislate, you cannot license farming, because
Right.
next thing you know, you're gonna be licensing roses. And so that's
All right.
us not knowing our role. And then we take the model from Van Jones in the blue collar, no, the green collar economy. That's his book, Van Jones, the green collar economy.
Okay.
And he lays it all out. Solar
Mm.
panels, is Chirp out in Silicon Valley that's doing that.
Right.
Um,
Moving towards this green economy now.
right. And so that's how we bring green collar jobs to, replace with the blue collar jobs, but it's to make us whole, which comes back to nature's God. And so now we're no longer living in a state of survival, we're living. And that is the vision that I have for our platform. And since we've created a We Are the People party, we are not saying elect us to get this done. We're saying we're doing it now. So if you are in North Carolina, or where you at, Dr. Craig, and you need a tangible brother to be your therapist to deal with your post-traumatic prison syndrome or post-traumatic slave syndrome, and to help you renew your mind, that's not something we can vote on. Or Dr. Joy DeGroy with her book, Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome, or NAMI that deals with this, or the Aboriginals that deal with healing the way that they do with their healing circles and peace circles and stuff. So this is me, a brother that's coming to you as a holistic brother, not
Hmm.
a brother saying this is for our people. No, this is for the people.
Hmm.
And if my people, as Second Chronicles 7:14, would turn from their wicked ways, so I'm saying we the people have the power. We have the power to form a new government, and we have the power to turn from our own wicked ways. I
Absolutely.
so we is no longer blaming nobody. We're a generation of reckoning with ourselves and saying we can run for Congress.
Makes me think of Dawes effects back in the day. Chickadee check yourself before you riggedy wreck yourself.
I
So yeah,
mean, that's
we have
dope.
to check ourselves.
Right. I like that. You gonna I'm gonna bring that back. I sit on a board with Curtis Blow's United Coalition for Humanities, and I'm the ambassador for the state of Illinois for that organization. And so, it's done got my foot in the door, essentially with that hip hop,
Yeah,
community.
yeah, man.
And it's a lot more that goes on with this brotherhood candidate than people would even begin to know,
Yeah.
because I've organized all of this into, categories on how I'm reaching the people. And I connected with this group called Tactical Civics.
Mhm.
It's a Republican primarily based organization,
Mhm.
and they charge $5 a month or $50 a year, and they give you all this training Monday through Friday. I mean, the system is cold blooded.
Online training.
No, you get on Zoom calls, all throughout the day.
Yeah.
Boom.
Zoom.
hmm
Yeah, virtual.
And so what I learned from them is the point I'm saying is they talk about the right to panel a grand jury, and that's the right the people have. And then
That's
you
right.
bring in the militia to ensure that this grand jury is protected. This is secret. We the people can do that. We don't. This is where the prosecutor and the judge got to leave,
Right.
because we bringing them up on charges. And see, that's us, the people, utilizing the power we have to create this new government that is really nothing new. It's the way it was intended to be.
Right on.
And that's what we get to do. Because for me, the only thing new is I'm in this generation, done did a lot of research and reading, And I'm bringing us back to be aware of stuff we didn't know, but some people do know.
The
And
people
the
suffer.
real
No,
wait, what you say, Dr. C?
people suffer because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
all. All of it.
Yeah.
In the 4 minutes,
It's
we're down to
I'm
4 minutes.
seeing it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it. Uh
So before we go, I want you to let folks know how they can reach you. If there's anything out that you have that they can purchase or peruse, let folks know that before we get out of here.
my website is awj2024.com. So AWJ Andy Williams Jr. 2024.com. All social media around my name, it says Hood Candidate. So it's, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's all the Hood Candidate. The most important thing I need right now is to spread the word. So that's
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing, to say, listen, it is a brother that has it together. He not just you know, some brother off the wall saying I'm running for president on some old fluke. No, 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 that ain't what I'm on. So you get to hear that. So when you share the word, there's other people that have podcasts. There's other people that are journalists, has community newspapers. Hit me up on the website. Grab the email, because I'm not 100% sure my little intake box is working yet. We're trying to work that out for the last week and a half. But shoot me an email at Andy@awj2024.com. Connect me with them, because this is a people powered movement. And we think it takes millions of dollars. No, it just takes a messenger with the right message. Because if you know historically, Yeshua and them 12 disciples, and brother ain't had no internet, they weren't talking about no money. They was walking on some walking in sandals and riding donkeys. And that message is still relevant today. So we can't make that excuse,
Right
other
on.
than saying that we can do this just powered within our people. And
The
that's
people.
what I need the most. That's that. If we could just share the message. Now, those that say, look, I'm gonna get his brother $100, $200, hit that up on the site too, because that donation box is working.
Mhm.
And I share that because the last 3 months I paint, like, I do the painting to support myself. And I just now started to charge for the litigation work I do, because I done freed some brothers from prison. I done
Mhm.
sued the government. Like this, I'm cold with the paperwork. It's a gift with that. But I never charged the people, because I was thinking from a poverty mindset, and the only one that was going back into poverty was me. That's who was. So I
Gotta
switched
buy
it up.
groceries. Yeah, you gotta buy groceries.
Yeah. So I'm not. You don't have to necessarily give a donation, in the sense that I'm here to work on your behalf. But you can find me at Andy@awj2024.com.
Right
For
on,
real.
brother. And with that, brother, we're gonna call it a wrap as we wind it down. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights, brother.
Thank you, Brother Craig.
Right on.
All
And
right.
so with our last minute, I'm gonna ask you. I don't think you sent me a headshot. If you could send me maybe a headshot and a micro bio, something really short, maybe a paragraph or something I can use to advertise our discussion. Right now, I got
Okay.
about 4 or 5 podcasts ahead of this waiting to come out. I've been doing them every other week, but I think I'm about to drop these last ones every week because we're coming up on the end of the year. I want to get them all in. So
Got you.
maybe about 5 or 6 weeks, yours will drop. I still got to just do some little editing. So we got
Okay.
some, brother. It's been a pleasure,
You too. I'll send it over right now. Okay.
brother. All right. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
brother.
Thanks, Brother C.
Thank
Peace.
you, brother. Peace.